Okay, so it was really a joint work, and so me and Robin, we are presenting it, but it's also Gareth, Roeland, Benoit, everybody's involved. And we are talking about how we were pursuing the moving target, because yes, the task was, we went into exploration, and we tell you our path to do that. But to start with, we give you a little bit of task intuition, because some people are familiar already with video hyperlinking or not. So our idea is that when we are watching the videos, yeah. So when we are watching the videos, we want to get some more information, about what has been shown in the videos, what has been discussed in the videos, what we both see and hear in the video, and it might be some different topics along the video. Like if we take this video information, this video segment in the initial video that we call the anchor, and here the information is about fish and chips, and then we might want to have more target video segments, and those target video segments would give us more information about how fish and chips are made and what's the tradition of that meal and so on. And as we watch the video, there might be some other topics covered, right? It's the video about London, so we go to the Buckingham Palace, so we might want to know more about the history, what's happened with Queen Elizabeth in the past, what happened with current Queen, and all this data is in the collection, and we want to, our task is to bring the users to all these different types of information. So when we are talking about moving target and taking the aim of the target, what we mean is that, as in this case, so the target in general is one concept, but we can look at the target with different angles, so the task might be a bit shaped differently. We can focus on different stuff. So although there are different versions of the task, so what we did along the way is that we looked at one angle and we tried it. Then if we kind of run, because it's an iterative task, so we run the task, we analyze the results, and then we understand that, okay, probably we can look at the angle, at the task slightly differently, so that the way that we are defining the targets in our video collections, the way we define the anchors in our video collections, the way we evaluate how good we are at shooting at the targets, it all might be different, and each year we are changing, we are iterating the task. And in more details, like chasing history is very complicated actually, but so Gareth, we started it officially in 2011, but in 2009, 2010, there was the tasks that were was preceding our journey. It was video clay task linking task at video clay. And we started under the umbrella of MediaEval benchmark. We started as Brave New Task, then we moved to be the core task, then we moved to the TRECVid, and now we are presenting and discussing stuff again here at MediaEval. Our task was changing because we started first doing the search within the collection, and then we did search and hyperlinking. So we looked at all the aspects of how we find the videos in the collection, how we define the anchors, those initial snippets, those initial segments, and how do we find the target videos. And we also, we looked, we changed a lot of things following our targets. So we looked at different data sets. So the data sets that are user generated, or the split TV data, or the data sets that are generated by professionals, the BBC. We looked at different types of users who are shooting at this, finding these perfect targets that will bring them more information and interesting information about the content in the anchor. So we looked at what would be the interest of general users, what the multimedia professionals would be interested in, and we also looked at this year if we focus on the anchors that are Q guided, and we give you a bit more details about what it is later on. Of course, it is the benchmarking task, so we were changing the data, we were looking at different type of users, and every year we were looking at how do we evaluate the results, and what was our experience that at every year's iteration we kind of readjusted every time the metrics so that we can cover more aspects of the task that we understood each time at the workshop or in the analysis after the workshop.
Skip that now?
Yeah, well, that's a bit more technical details about the collections. So now I'll switch to Robin for the anchor creation.
Yeah, hey everyone. So I'm going to talk about the first part in the hyperlinking task, namely the anchor creation. So you want to have users that define an anchor that you that then a system should find targets for, right? And there was also a long history in how we did this. In 2012, we just used relevant segments from a search task. So we first had a standard ad hoc search task, and then we used the relevant segments as anchors. Right, this is not necessarily the most obvious thing, but this was our first attempt of trying these things. And then the next year we brought something really different. We got hold of real users, and they were as real as they could be at the BBC, and we tried to get from them what they actually want as targets, as anchors. Then the next year we try to increase that study to see whether we get better results. And as you can see from the next year, because then we started asking media professionals, that was not entirely satisfactory. So in 2015 we asked professionals to create the anchors for us instead of real users. However, this also proved to be difficult for various reasons. We get to that in a second. And therefore we jumped into TRECVid 2016 with yet another way of creating anchors, namely by giving the anchor creator some guideline. Okay, but let's first talk about the 2013 revelation on how to do anchor creation. So we invited 28 users from the London public to participate in this study. So I think this is also, compared to other benchmarking tasks, quite a respectable number. And they were from all sorts of areas. So there were students, policemen, hairdressers, bouncers, self-employed people. So it's like a large variety of people. It was actually fun also to talk to them after the study to see what moved them to come to that study themselves. And it was a 2-hour session where they first were allowed to orientate themselves in the collection so that they knew what kind of stuff would be in there. Then they would define a known item search task, because we needed that as well. And then inside this known item they would chop off anchors as they found them. So it gave them a kind of a window where they could find anchors. This is a snapshot from the session. And they had this user interface, so where they could first enter their information need and a search query. Then they got to certain videos, and then they selected, okay, this is the known item that I would want to look into. And then they got to this screen where they first had to describe the known item, but they also had to select the exact start and end date, because we only gave them short start and end times as a start. And then inside this known item, they would have to they had to define the anchor. So here, in the first 15 seconds of the known item, the person wanted to have he gave this segment the title "Clip on Eating Fish and Chips in London," and the clip description would be "Recipe on Fish and Chips." So this is the stuff we asked the users to provide. And we thought this obviously leads to an amazing task where, because this is like from real people, so they must give us very relevant data. However, I think Roeland and I were at the BBC supervising these things. I think we didn't take this, or we weren't close enough on the users, let's say. Because, so what happened was that people entered nonsense anchors, and nonsense is not that, you know, we couldn't connect to the topic they were about, but nonsense in the sense that we couldn't make out their sense. So, for example, someone would enter as a title Beyoncé, as a description Beyoncé, and so what? Like, I don't even know what Beyoncé is. A singer, I think, right? Or an actor, or you know, like what aspect of him or her? Oh my God! I should have trained this more, but you know, like there was not to be made out. Then from a lot of people, we also got back that they actually didn't understand the concept, so they made the task, and then we had this informal interview, and they said, I actually had no clue what I was doing. So that made us not particularly more confident about the output. We found, just by looking through the things, that the segments were actually defined very poorly, so that people also had like technical issues to set the time boundaries. The descriptions were incomplete, so that led to a lot of problems with relevant judgments. And then we had, in some cases, because we ran out of anchors, we had to interfere and do some manual adjustments. So where we said, oh, this person who searched for Beyoncé, or who typed in Beyoncé, probably meant this. However, we didn't feel really comfortable about this because we kind of invented an anchor based on someone, but we had no clue whether this is actually what the person wanted. Then in 2014, we thought like, okay, more users might bring more, so we invited more users. What we focused on as well is that the user interface was much better. So we streamlined the information entering process so that it was easier for the user to carry out his task. However, it was expensive, and the results, like, we didn't have a measure for this, but the outcome wasn't much better than before. That brought us to the event in the method in 2015, where we were at TRECVid last year, and there we said, okay, so maybe, you know, personal users or home users can't really do that task, and because it's also a new task that they don't experience that in reality, so how would they know what anchors to define? So we went to media professionals like journalists and archivists and asked them, could you please define us some anchors for these videos? And then you get into very mundane problems that these professionals, they don't have time, right? So you sit there with an appointment with this one guy, and he just doesn't turn up because he had something else to do. That happened to Roeland, right? Yeah. But we spent a lot of effort to also coach them interactively while they were doing the task, so that we really made sure that they understand what they had to do. But so they were the availability of them were rather limited, and we found that the multimodality, so when we were at the workshop then later on, we found that the multimodality was not sufficient. So most of the anchors were best answered by using the speech recognition. And if you're at TRECVid, this is like the kingdom of vision. You know, like if you force everyone just to use text retrieval, they are not really enthusiastic. Hence, we really thought that, okay, so we really have to have a multimodal task next year. And with this, I hand over to Maria.
Okay, so this year we thought, okay, let's try to be creative and again change a little bit the angle, try to catch the moving target and find the truly multimodal anchors in our content. So we thought like, okay, multimodal means that it has to be a combination of verbal and visual information. And it's easy to define, but it's kind of hard to find in thousands of videos that we have. So what we did is that first of all, we looked for the videos for the verbal linguistic cues in the transcripts of those videos. Oh, sorry, what happened?
This one. Okay. Sorry for that.
Okay, so we looked for the videos where the people in the videos were actually saying something which referred to the visual content. Like they were saying, we see here, this looks like, we want to show you. And then the users that were creating and defining the anchors, then they looked for not only to have those linguistic cues in the videos, but also to actually see that some objects, some actions. So there was something crucially important in the visual stream that would make this segment important and interesting for to define as the anchor. And actually, we further on we confirmed this multimodality of the anchors, but that comes later. So because we now go a little bit back to the main process of ground truth creation, how does it work within the benchmark setup? And it's really an iterative process, and we within our task we always refer to the crowdsourcing workers to help us to actually assess the relevance of all the segments, all the targets that were found by the participants. So each year we first define the anchors one way or another, then we get the participants submitting their results, then we define the heat using this anchors information and the participants' results, and then we get the relevance judgments. And these relevance judgments and also the feedback that the workers were giving to us, it helped us for the next year to redefine the heat, actually to sometimes to also redefine the anchors or redefine the process of creating the anchors, and then to go again through the same process, to run the heat on the crowdsourcing platform, to get the results, and then again review the heat and do it all again. So we did it every year, and basically in more details how were we doing it, and we were trying to find some common language with the crowd, because it was both we wanted them to do the work, but we were not sure sometimes what we were asking them to do. So in 2012, when we started the assessment, we were just generally saying that, okay, please watch these two video segments, the anchor and the target, and just say to us whether you feel that they are related in some way. We literally said that on the heat, in some way, because we were not sure ourselves how to define that. And what we were collecting were basically the yes and no answers from the workers. Further on in 2013 and 14, we increased the amount of data. And we also changed the heat a bit, so we were still showing both of the videos. But at the same time, we also were given a description that we asked. So initially, when the users were creating the anchors, we were asking them, okay, so you're choosing this video segment as an anchor, and what do you think your target video would be? What can you please describe to us what you envisage you would be happy with? So when we were showing. At the stage of creating the ground truth, when we were shown the two video segments, we were also given this description that the other person did create, so that we were hoping that the workers at the crowdsourcing platform could kind of get in the same state of mind as the person who defined the anchor, and then this relevance judgment will be kind of more grounded and more connected with the initial choice of anchors. And but we still, first we were asking for these yes/no questions, and well, having shown the video and given the description. And in 2015 we also went a step further, so we were showing the videos, giving the description, but we also asked, okay, so if you say that those videos are related to each other or not, can you please explain to us what is the actual content in the video that helped you to make this decision, whether you see the same people or you see that something visually similar or different. So we were asking to give us some categories. And this year we went even further. So we thought, okay, maybe it's too complicated actually to put all the questions in one hit. So maybe we split the things in several steps. So actually this year we ran loads of crowdsourcing, because first we thought, okay, we check whether we actually did create the truly multimodal anchors, and then we show the, as another step, the second step, we give only one video segment, the target segment, and check with the workers whether the description, well, we give them a list of descriptions, and those are the descriptions of that were given by the anchor creator, whether they fit this video or not. And then afterwards, when we have a subset of the targets that were judged as relevant, then we ask the workers to say, okay, so here's the anchor, here's the target, can you give us a detailed description of what is connecting those two? So in a bit kind of more visual representation of these three steps is that, so we start with the manual creation of the anchor. Then our first step is this, so we call it anchor verification. So we go to the crowd, we ask whether the, with different questions, we ask the workers to help us to define whether the anchors are actually multimodal. And those multimodal anchors we are given to the participants of the task. They create the targets automatically, and those targets go to the crowd. We have this target vetting, so there we get the feedback from the Amazon MTurk, whether the Amazon MTurk workers, whether those are relevant targets to the description. So that's how we have our QRL for like this ground truth to run the evaluation. And then afterwards we return again to the crowd and we do really this video-to-video relevance analysis and collect the detailed descriptions. So now we switch back again and Robin gives more details about the actual
This is all very much to confuse you about who's standing in front of you. Okay, once you have ground truth and participant input, this is no magic, right? You obviously have to measure how good each of them did. And after we first experimented with the known item search and mean reciprocal rank, we thought once there could be multiple link targets, we need some kind of, IR, more standard IR measure where we can say, okay, this run brings the good targets up front or not. And we started by saying, I think it's a good scientific practice. We said, okay, we know mean average precision, so let's squeeze the trunk of this elephant until he gets pink, and then we shoot it because we know how to shoot pink elephants, don't we? So we invented the adapted mean average precision, where, okay, so these are the raw results of a candidate, of participant, and these are the assessed segments, and note that they're not in sync, right? So this might be a run that has never been submitted to the pool, or so in this very shape it can't be one from the pool because we judged from the top. But just suppose it's a new run and we want to measure the adapted mean average precision. So we simply said, all right, so this result overlaps with a relevant result, so we take it as relevant. Then this was the second result that overlaps with nothing that we judged before, so it's non-relevant, it's common practice. And the third result just misses the relevant part here, and therefore we say, well, it's non-relevant. And by the way, we here let the majority decide, right? So, and with a bias to relevance. So if this one overlaps with non-relevant data and relevant data, and we decide still that it's relevant. So that's simply a decision that we made. However, and we were quite, keen on finding out how good that is, because we thought this is like a straightforward extension of mean average precision to a very challenging surrounding of unbounded segment retrieval. So we thought, oh, we did quite well, it looks reasonable. But then people came up with this, right? So there was some participant who returned very long segments, say of 2 minutes length, and this was relevant, judged by the mechanical Turk. And then there was another participant who returned these little segments here, like of say 5 seconds long, and they really fired into the subject, into the segment. This really happened, so that there was one run that just had like hundreds of results in one relevant segment, and therefore they get a precision of 1 because obviously this is like a very good result, but in reality, this is not a system that you want, right? Because you do want different stuff, and especially the measure doesn't tell you what happens deeper down in the list, because mean average position really much biases you to the top ranks. So we said, okay, let's look at the literature and what could we do otherwise. We came up with a binned version where we binned the results into fixed length bins. So here the results 3 would fall into the bin 1 and be discarded because it already was, this bin was already covered by result 1, and result 1 was expanded to be exactly of the bin size length, and so on. So we have then effectively only 2 results, and we count this one as relevant because in that bin there is more relevance than non-relevance, and this one doesn't have any relevance, so you get result 0. This is fair enough, but then this didn't really help us solving that problem, because if the, you don't really know how wide you make you have to make these bins, and if you make them too big, then you're at the same problem as before. So we looked into a measure that is also used in XML retrieval, namely it's called tolerance to non-relevance. I think it's not tolerance to intolerance, but tolerance to non-relevance, which says, okay, I just tolerate a couple from like a starting point. So if this is the result, from that on I tolerate a certain window of time of watching non-relevant content, for example. So and therefore this video would extend to here because this is the tolerance window, or the segment extends to here because this is the tolerance window, and therefore we wouldn't take result 3 because this just overlaps. You don't see it that well. So we just discard all overlapping segments. But basically, instead of taking bins, you basically take a window from the start of the segment. But that also led to unpredictable. So the thing how this normally happens was that someone came up to us in the workshop and said, "Hey, I'm very good in this measure and I'm very bad in this measure. What happened?" And that was exactly the point that that these measures are really sensitive to to the parameters, how you set them. And then David, from a PhD student from Gareth, came along and invented the, I don't know what it exactly stands for, but MISE measure, mean average interpolated precision. And that basically compares the effort that someone has to pay. So if someone returns result number 1, then the effort that this person has to pay is this here, right? Like this part. And if you assume that the person, if he jumps into relevant content, that he just he doesn't rewind, but he just watches forward, then this is the reward he gets. And if you then plug these segments together, you get into like a sequence of segments that a person would watch if he would just watch the whole ranked list downwards. And then you come to a measure that's close to mean average precision but doesn't carry all the problems that we had before with setting these parameters and so on. And then just to illustrate one of this previous comment that people came up to us and said, "Oh, we were so good in this one measure and so bad in the other measure." So that happened last year in TRECVid. There, we first announced that mean average precision going to be our main measure. Then we found that some runs really weren't, performing the way we thought a good hyperlinking system would perform. Then we introduced the MISE measure, and we see that the top performing runs under mean average precision really don't make a difference in terms of MISE. And so these participants were really disappointed because they thought like, "Oh, we have a great system," but I'm sorry, that was mainly due to overfitting the metric. Before we wrap up, I'd like to show some very hot slides about TRECVid results that are coming up, and I just realized when I went to the stage that this is probably not what the TRECVid organizers want, because these slides have never been shown before. So if you go to TRECVid and have a good connection to Ian Soborov, please close your eyes. We're going to continue nonetheless. So
close your ears.
Oh yeah, the ears as well.
Visual information.
Yeah.
Truly multimodal.
Yeah, Benoit, don't videotape this. You're going to be.
Nobody will recognize you.
Anyway, so these were the results from this year. Due to some mix-ups with the collections, there were not that many participating teams. Interesting was that most people used some sort of metadata, or like it wasn't really consistent whether people used metadata or not in the system. So metadata is the textual information that came with the video. If people were using transcripts, they all were using 2016, which is really sad, because we hoped to get some even balance between those two versions of transcripts, and we could then make very interesting comparisons. So that won't happen. And then in 2012, our conclusion was that you have to spend a lot of effort in defining good segments for targets, right? So like, how big is our segment? And Maria had a nice contribution with the that prosodic feature segmentation is yours, right? Yeah. But these days, everyone just does fixed length segmentation. So they just say, okay, I take segments of 5 seconds long or 10 seconds long.
Usually more closer to minutes than seconds.
Yeah. So anyway, a fixed length. And for visual features, this is no surprise. The deeper, the better. So people used our AlexNet features that we provided, but also the top-ranking teams also used other deep learning features. With this, I'm going to confuse you again and hand over to Maria.
Yes, but we are almost done with all the confusion. So actually, we want to switch to the most important slides of all our presentation. It's what is the take-home message. So we are shooting at the target and how it is and what have we learned and what's the experience that we share, and as the organizers, as participants. So basically, we listed the take-home messages as a cycle of the task itself. So we have the beginning of the task, the whole life cycle of the task, and the wrap-up meetings. So in the beginning of the task, it's usually this yearly procedure that we think about the task. We define what is the angle that we are looking at this year, how do we analyze it, so what do we have in mind, and then we gather the feedback on the task, on this proposal, and it happens at MediaEval, it happens at TRECVid. Basically, all the main task main benchmark organizers, they kind of give you a little bit of feedback, so how feasible it is. Then comes the very hard question, like, is there a participant that is going to take part in the task? And well, actually, I mean, we usually need more than one. And is there money to run the task? Because yes, we didn't really mention here that, but you know, the workers on the crowdsourcing platform, they don't work for free, so you need to have some investment. So, and money means also, is there money in terms of project funding, so that would actually support the participants to take part in your task. And in general, of course, whenever you start this road, whenever you start get onto the chase, you have to have general scientific questions. So is it really interesting scientifically, like what we are trying to achieve, and what will be the contribution of the task when we actually do that, and when we run the task, when we get the results, how important that will be. Then during the task life cycle, yes, be prepared for disaster. We had many different disasters. Just say this year we thought that okay, we are very experienced, we are running the task for many years, but then we've got our data revolt, and we had to change the data set, create new features, and of course inform our participants and try to calm them down that everything is okay, the task is running, and yes, we are changing it, we are reshaping, but please keep the interest, because we see scientific perspective in it. And of course, so this is why interaction with participants is super important. But what we also found, and this is more of the MediaEval experience than the TRECVid experience, is that the close collaboration between the task organizers and the benchmark organizers is very important, because say within MediaEval we have this constant, this bi-weekly, not constant, bi-weekly, well, sometimes it feels like it's constant, so it's subconscious talking, but we have the bi-weekly calls, and what is important, that it's the calls between all the task organizers. So actually, when you run the task at MediaEval, you know how the other tasks are doing. So if there are problems in the other tasks, you know what are these problems, and well, we help each other to find solutions, or at least we know what kind of solutions are found. And as always, when the life cycle of the task is finished, then we do the wrap up, and usually that means that yes, we were shooting at the target, but it was moving again. So for the next year we have to adjust the target, which means that each year we are kind of redefining, reshaping the questions that we are posing, and like picking our next target for the year. And we always have to, when we wrap up the life cycle of the task, we have to think about the sustainability for the next year. So all these questions about money and participants comes again to mind. So that was pretty much all our experience that we wanted to share. So we hope that that helps, and that was being interesting.